Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm chatting to you from Bali because that's where I'm going to be for the next few months, doing videos and whatnot. And I spoke to the guys at Pondok Lensa, their rental place here in Bali, and they were kind enough to let me use the A9 for the day. And I really wanted to test out Sony for a really long while, so I was really excited about it. They also gave me the 24-70 to test out because it's my usual setup, so I thought it would make sense for me to use the same kind of things. I'm going to be testing it out here in my little villa, and we'll see how it goes. If you guys are ever in Bali, make sure to check out Pondok Lensa out because they are one of the best places to rent out your gear here. So on the day that I rented it out, I decided to divide it into two parts. I had two different models. The first one, I was just kind of learning how to use the camera a bit, even though, you know, the principle behind any camera is the same. Sometimes settings are different, and sometimes you just have to use, get used to how to use a camera and so on. And it's not just as simple as, picking it up and just taking photos. I just always try and set up everything as perfectly as I can in camera. So it was all an experience, and I wanted to make sure I did everything right and so on. And then for the second part of the day, I actually compared it to my Canon. And I know that, the Canon and the Sony are a completely different situation because the Canon is not a mirrorless as Sony is. But I just thought it would be good to compare the current setup that I have with the new setup that I was testing out. Because, if I was ever considering of like maybe getting a Sony and stuff, it would be good to see how it compares to my current equipment that I have. And I find, even though it's not the same kind of system, and it's a different brand, it's still important to have an idea of how, the two brands compare next to each other. So in general, there were a few things that I noticed about the camera straight away. The scales and the lens are the other way around, so it starts at 70 and goes down to 24. With the Canon, it's the other way around, it starts at 24 and goes to 70, so it's kind of like a weird thing because I'm trying to go further and I go closer, so just something to get used to, I guess. Another thing that I noticed that I was using a bit more was the live view. When I use my Canon, I don't usually use the live view that much, even though I have it. I just find that the camera is quite heavy and it's just not very efficient to be using the live view in the first place. I always go for my viewfinder, plus I find the live view drains the battery a lot in the Canon. Sony is a much lighter camera in comparison to Canon, especially even with the 24-70, still the size and the weight is definitely different. And Canon isn't a very heavy camera, and the lens isn't super heavy either, but I do have quite weak arms, and I find anything that kind of helps reduce the weight is a massive plus for me for sure. Even the size of the camera is much easier to carry around and so on. It's not as bulky as the Canon. So it's definitely a big thing, especially now that I'm traveling and I'm going from place to place, and I find it's quite a big, stress to try and fit the Canon and fit all the lenses, and it's just such a big bulky camera and it's so heavy, and it just all adds up. I love is now that I'm shooting in the full light, I like the fact that I can check if I'm overexposing because I have the little zebra pattern on my screen here. So it is very helpful actually to just be able to see if I'm overexposing or not. So that's definitely a plus that you don't have in Canon. I just want to put it out there that I'm not super familiar with Sony because I don't really use it as much. I am a Canon shooter. So when I first got the A9 and I took some photos, they looked super saturated on the screen. The colors were very vibrant. They had this nice kind of lack of contrast almost, where the darks were much brighter than the Canon counterpart. But when I transferred them to my computer, it wasn't really a case. The raw files were quite, neutral in color. So I'm not sure, is it because I was shooting JPEG and RAW and was showing like a JPEG preview? I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. But it was definitely a learning curve for me because when I was taking photos, I was kind of surprised, and I liked the colors a lot, especially in the shadows, but I found when I was shooting in direct sunlight, they look a bit crazy on the camera. But then as soon as I transferred them onto my computer, they looked completely fine. After looking at the files on my computer, I have to say I'm pretty impressed with the Sony files. They have definitely a better dynamic range than the Canon. I find like they are so much more balanced in terms of highlights and shadows. As you see, they are much less contrasty, which I like. The skin isn't too strongly saturated as well as it is in Canon. So in general, I have to say I'm pretty impressed with the files. But as I said, this is just something I would definitely have to look into, how to calibrate your screen and how to adjust it properly. Because I only had it for the day, I really didn't get a chance to kind of, play around with it as much as I would want to. So if I'm testing out the next camera, I will definitely be having it for a few more days, so I have that time to spend just setting up my camera and calibrating everything and making sure that everything is perfect. There's also absolutely no denying that Sony is killing the game when it comes to video. I love shooting video on my Canon. I find it really beautiful. The colors, the bokeh, everything is amazing. But it's pretty much impossible to shoot video on Canon without having, a massive shakiness. So unless you're shooting on a tripod or you have a Ronin or something like that to stabilize the image, it's just pretty much unusable unless you're standing super still. And I find with Sony, because you have the camera stabilization, you can pretty much hand hold the camera and it just takes great videos. So this is definitely a plus. And nowadays when I do a lot of YouTube and I do a lot of fashion videos and so on, it's definitely something that I struggle with the Canon, because it's just not really a possibility for me. So unless I have some nice little detail shots that I want to get, I get them on my Canon. But other than that, I just switch to Sony completely. Okay guys, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my little comparison. I found it really, really interesting to work on a completely new setup. So many people shoot Sony nowadays and I really wanted to try it out for myself. I have to say I really enjoy it. I feel like it has this kind of very modern Instagram look. I think a lot of Instagrammers are using Sony right now, or at least it looks like they do. It kind of gave me a different perspective on my work, which was very interesting, because I kind of felt, even though I was shooting with pretty much exactly the same gear as I usually do, the same lens, the same focal lens and so on, I felt like my work felt different because the colors were a bit different and just the vibe was a bit different in general. So I really enjoyed that and I thought it was really, really cool. Make sure to check out Pontoc Lensa again, because they're really, really awesome and they have really good rental if you guys are ever in Bali and need equipment. They're lovely, lovely guys as well. And yeah, if you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next time.